So I have had to reacquaint myself with what's going on at West Ham because I've been away for 3 or 4 days, and I do like to detox when I'm away. I like to switch off completely from all things. I wouldn't say all technology because I'm prone to doing a little bit of, should we say, nature photography.
What are you doing?
But aside from that, I tend not to dip my toe in the West Ham waters, which is easy enough to do in the international break. So I got back today, and I thought what I'll do is I'll have a little refresh and see what's happened. We'll discuss the Nicholas Füllkrug stuff tomorrow and the striker situation. But there's one thing that really caught my attention, and it was really off of the back of what Geo's video was earlier this morning, which was about, in essence, Nuno Espírito Santo losing his backroom team. But it really got me thinking about how disadvantaged Nuno is. And what was interesting was looking at the comments over the last few days, and what Geo was saying really, which is there is a natural tendency to just assume that Nuno has not been backed by the board because their stock is so low. Nobody has any faith that the club is run well. So if West Ham are seen not to be spending, then the natural thing to assume is, well, the board are just being tight. Now, Geo's, if you've not seen it, Geo's video is really, really good. He's actually gone and done his research. He's had a look and to be fair, it does seem like half the people in Nuno's normal backroom team are unavailable, right? They're already in jobs. They're doing stuff. So he couldn't get them even if he wanted to. So what's happened is, as I'm sure you know, Nuno has basically promoted from within. He's promoted people from the academy, and that is probably going to make up the bulk of the composition of his backroom team. Although I do think he will appoint 1 or 2. But a natural inclination is to think, well, hold on, the board are just being cheap. Because there are still a couple of people at Nottingham Forest, as Geo pointed out, that if we wanted to spend the money, we could go and get them. So Geo basically summarised in his video and said, Nuno is so disadvantaged now, we're asking him to do a job without the team that are normally with him. So we're about to find out how good or bad Nuno is as a coach on his own, without his backroom team. Now, that's a tough thing to do. I totally agree with Geo. This is a really, really tough thing to do. If you're not going to have like your trusted lieutenants, whatever, your fitness coaches, your set-piece coaches, your assistant manager, that's a big deal. This is going to be really, really tough. So much he's relying on his own expertise. And it's actually quite a lot of work to do, which makes you wonder. And it makes you wonder why he took the job on in the first place. And Geo made the point when it was one of the people that were still at Nottingham Forest who was part of the composition of Nuno's backroom team. Geo made the point that he might look at West Ham and think, no, you're all right, you crack on over there. I'm all right where I am. Thank you very much. And this is what became interesting because I thought Nuno's in a no-lose situation at West Ham, which is very different to the situation that Graham Potter found himself in. We discussed this a few times in recent videos, and that is that Potter had to make this work at West Ham. He just had to. He had a big, big pool of players at Chelsea. And I think at Chelsea, failure is not being in the top 4, not contesting trophies. That would constitute failure. That's not what Potter did. Potter struggled to win games, full stop. Potter, basically, under Potter, Chelsea were a mid-table team. A club with that much money to spend, that's failure. He had to repair his reputation at West Ham. He absolutely had to. What he wanted to do was get another Premier League job, straight away afterwards, he had to repair his reputation. He failed miserably. Statistically, the worst full-time manager West Ham have ever had. Just awful. Absolutely awful. Just forget for a moment. I know there'll be some of you that might think that he is a good coach. I don't. But some of you might think he's a good coach and he was never going to be able to thrive, bearing in mind the ownership he was operating under. Almost it doesn't matter. As anyone else might look at that and think, no, this because he didn't have any credit in the bank before, they might look at it and think, yeah, I don't think we'll bother. I don't think this is the situation that Nuno's in. I think because of Potter's failure, because of Lopetegui's failure, because of the perception of how David Moyes was treated, I actually think that Nuno is in a bit of a no-lose situation at West Ham, because I think even if, and I'm going to say, I hate saying this, but I do believe it. I think even if he takes us down, that will not preclude him from getting offered another Premier League job. because I think he's got enough credit in the bank. I think they'll look at what's happened at Forest, they'll look at what's happened at Wolves, and I think they'll say, do you know what? Those are extraordinary circumstances at West Ham. I think then people will say nobody could succeed at West Ham. And I think for that reason, I think he'll get the job and he'll get a payoff, and that'll be it. I think he walks into another job. So I just don't think that there is that risk attached to it. Or should I say the consequences that we attach to the risk of him not having his regular backroom team. I don't know. The truth of the matter is I don't know how much of it is down to penny pinching. I've been playing catch up today. I'm not sure how accurate this is, but there seemed to be a story that was doing the rounds over the last few days that £20 million have been paid out in compensation packages. Now, I'm not sure whether that is... Well, it can't involve Moyes. It's got to be Lopetegui and his backroom team, and it's got to be Potter and his backroom team. What is odd, though, is that we would sort of sack all of Potter's backroom team and terminate their contracts at the same time. Because even if Nuno has got to take on extra coaches, not everyone under Potter's coaching regime can be crap, right? There's got to be a coach or two that's going to be useful. But anyway, so the story goes. £20 million paid out in severance for Graham Potter, Lopetegui and their staff. I can't believe that that's accurate. I just can't. Or maybe I just don't want to. Maybe I just don't want to believe that that's accurate. I'm sure we spent out a lot, and I'm sure it's more than 10 million, but 20 million, wow. I mean, that would make no sense at all anyway, because we were apparently looking at other managers. I always use Marco Silva as an example because his compensation package was, it depends what newspaper you read, 6 million, 8 million, something like that. And we didn't want to pay that because we do things on the cheap. But there's an old saying, isn't there, which is buy cheap, buy twice. Or buy cheap, pay twice, something like that. And basically, for examples exactly like this, if you go and buy the cheapest product on the market, it's crap, it'll break, you'll have to replace it. So always buy the best that you can afford. And this is what we're seeing. Lopetegui was crap. We paid all of his severance off and all of his staff. Got in Graham Potter. Both of whom, by the way, are cheap in as much at the start because you don't have to pay compensation for them. So they're cheap appointments, but in the long run, it ends up costing you money. So are West Ham capable of trying to do things on the cheap? Yes, I believe they are. And this is where I think things like paying £1 million for Carl McCauley doesn't help at all. £1 million compensation for Carl McCauley, then we sack him. We didn't need to. Look, we needed to get rid of Graham Potter. We absolutely needed to do that. But I just think it's almost wasteful. Now, maybe, just maybe, Nuno came in and said, sack him. Maybe he did. I don't know. When this starts to happen time after time, because we're meant to believe the same thing, that Graham Potter came in and said, sack him, including Tim Steyer, and I don't know. This happens so frequently, you have to think that a lot of this is coming from above. This is just the way the club are run. So do I believe that the club would be cheap with such things? I do. But also I think that the club can be stupid with the money, because whilst I don't think it was particularly prudent to sack Carl McCauley, I don't think it was particularly prudent to appoint him in the first place. But by paying compensation to Chelsea of £1 million for a data analyst, I'm telling you, I bet that's a world record that will never be broken in our lifetimes, right? For a data analyst, a club will pay £1 million compensation for someone that does that. And I don't wish to undermine or demean what he did. Like I said to you before, I would absolutely credit him with the... we're going and appointing and hiring and identifying Malik Diouf. I would absolutely credit him with that. But I still think it's a big compensation package to pay. This is what I would say, though. We've shown we're capable of doing that. So could we go and pay Nottingham Forest some compensation to get Nuno's preferred coaches? Yes, I believe we could. Would we? I think we've shown that we probably would. There is another problem, though, which is Marinakis. I don't know. Would his pride be wounded by that? Would he want to try and scupper Nuno at West Ham? Actually, take pride out of it for a second. They are a rival. At the moment, they are a relegation rival for West Ham. There's no doubt about it. Would I want to give a rival a coach if I thought he was a good coach? Yeah, I would. And I understand. I listened to Geo's video that Postecoglou has brought over some of his own staff this time yeah, I'm not sure we can expect any favours, which brings it back down to Nuno and his brave decision. I'm going to take over West Ham, and I'm going to do it on my own. And by the way, I'm going to appoint from within. I don't mind that, by the way. I think Arne Slot did that in his first season at Liverpool. He didn't appoint any of his own coaches. That being said, what he inherited was very, very different than what Nuno has inherited from Graham Potter. What Arne Slot got from Jurgen Klopp is very, very different. Let's just make that point. Is it brave? Yes. But I do believe he's in a no-lose situation, because I think if he succeeds, then he's the good guy, he's the saviour, he's the hero. But I think if he fails, then David Sullivan is the bad guy. David Sullivan's the villain. Because and rightly so, by the way, rightly so. Because then you could truly say nobody could make this job work under him. And I do believe this. I think if Nuno went, I think it'd probably be I believe this. Maybe it's hope more than anything else. I do believe that David Sullivan would have to go. It'd be untenable. I think he's probably feeling the pressure upon him now. Sometimes timing goes in his favour. I thought that about the international break. It takes a bit of pressure off him, doesn't it? Stuff like that. But undoubtedly, protests, votes of no confidence, boycotts, all this stuff, I think it all piles pressure. Then nothing piles pressure on the owner quite like the incompetency of his own appointments. And I think Lopetegui and Potter. Yes, I know Potter was ultimately chosen by Karen Brady, but, he didn't. David Sullivan didn't have to have that. He's the majority shareholder. He doesn't have to say yes. He could have picked his own guy. Didn't do so. And to be fair, his own guy, Lopetegui, wasn't much better anyway. So I just think, honestly, I do think that. I think what Nuno's doing is it brave? Yes. Is it admirable? Yes. But ultimately, I don't think it'll cost him.